And we are live. We are live for the first time in 2019. We are live for the first time in 2019. We are live for the first time in 2019. And we're queens, and we're queens, and we're queens. That's it. That's the news. I'm out. Bye. See you later. I'm done.
Well, that was worth waiting for.
It was so worth it. You missed me singing ridiculous nonsense at you. You know you did. Hi guys, welcome back. Today is a live with the wonderful, my most favorite person in the whole world, which is Miss Cris Ashburn. And we are going to be talking today about how to connect to Goddess. You send us gifts and messages of love. No, not really. Actual Goddess. Although we will be touching on the Goddess within at some point during this video, without a doubt. We're going to be looking at how to connect with Goddess energy from a fluxy perspective, because that's what Cris and I do. That's what we do. How we do. That's what we do. That's how we do. That's how we do. That's how we do. Okay, so I'm just going to
now.
I'm just loading up and I'm going to silence myself and so I can see the comments. Boop. Oh, the comments are underneath now, aren't they? Or are they? No, look at all those. Hello, everybody in the chat. Oh, that's lots of people. I'm glad you did not forget. Welcome, 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 welcome. Hi. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So the premise of this video was actually a request. I was actually asked to talk about this, which is how to connect to Goddess energy. So before we get started, I'm just going to say hello to everybody in the chat. You can't see me.
Uh-oh. Is it only on me? Am I selected?
Can you see me now? Was I selecting Cris?
Maybe. Giving me highlights. Yeah, probably.
How about that? How about that? Can you see this glorious lipstick? How's everybody doing? Can we all see me now? Can you all
I was
hear me?
laughing because Lunar Seedling says I even prepared food to eat while watching.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Cool. Hi, everybody. Hi, happy 2019. Welcome, witchy witches and spiritual seekers and
Indeed.
Everybody in between.
All the people.
All the people in the world. So, yes. So this was a request. Somebody asked me if I would talk about how to connect to the goddess or goddess energy because they were having difficulty. And they asked me right before I got sick. So it took a little while because I can just about hear you now. So, and we had the Christmas period, let's face it, which is crazy.
My mask.
Crazy beans.
It was my mask.
It's my mask. As in mass. Yay, we're live. How's everybody doing? I'm so excited to be live. I'm like, I can't focus in on the question. How's everyone doing? How are you all doing, everybody?
I haven't seen some of these faces in a while.
Ah, it's nice to see everybody turn out. That's awesome. That is so cool. I hope you all had a lovely end to 2018 and a lovely beginning to 2019. Mine was very ceremonial and some illness. So ceremony, ritual, illness, ceremony. And, oh, it's a floof. Are you coming to join us? Hi. She'll come sit by me down there. But if I try and get her on camera, she will not. Hi, sweetie. Hi. Okay, so. Oh, your first live. I'm going to pop your cherry. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
So we are talking about goddess energy and how to connect to goddess energy. So I guess probably the best place, it was a whole lot of purging at the end of 2018.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, every like authentic, gorgeous, amazing witch that I know was sick at the end of that, like all of them. And I was like, wow, like we're all purging this year.
One form or another, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought the place that we could probably start is, what do we mean by goddess energy? Like, maybe we should start with a definition to tear to pieces, probably, because that's what we do here. We're like, definitions, boxes.
Yes. Yes.
So what does goddess energy mean to Cris Ashburn?
I like that she just built that up and then went, and pot, over to you. Let's see. Goddess energy to me personally reminds me of the woman I grew up with. Quite frankly, it reminds me of sisterhood, womb space. It reminds me of sort of the wisdom and receptivity therein. It also reminds me of like standing your ground as well, because that's very like that taking up space thing as much as space holding also. It's so many things, honestly. Like it pours into everything for me, I think, because of the sort of fluxy approach that we take to things. I can see pieces of it in all things. I can make an argument for any of it. But
this is the problem.
I know, right? But I feel like when people say it, they often mean like, most often I think they mean the mother aspect of things, like very like the kind of stereotypical mother aspects, I would say.
Well, that's interesting. I'm just gonna shrink us down so I can see both at the same time. Woo! There we go. I'm in a strange old mood today, guys. I'm excited to be back.
I'm kind of feeling this side chat layout right now, though, because I can like watch everything at once for once. I used to have to pop out the chat separately and put it to the side because the video would be here and the chat would be here and it wouldn't update that well down in it. But it's updating great now to the side, so hey, that's an improvement.
Cris is happy. Hey, Maura. Hi. So to me, goddess and what I understand to be goddess is definitely shifted. So I think what the easiest way of talking about it is, when you first come to witchcraft, or even if it's even always been with you, you usually run into the initial descriptions of things, and it's usually, without knocking the microphone over, the divine feminine is one given. So a lot of people come to paganism because they want a masculine feminine balance for their spirituality, and they like the idea that there is a masculine and a feminine, as there is in all things in nature. And a lot of people who come to paganism, witchcraft, or whatever you want to label it, they felt very interconnected to nature their entire lives. Not everybody, but a lot of us. And nature has that balance of masculine and feminine in all things. Now, when you get deeper into it, you realize there is masculine and feminine energies in everything, regardless. So that's taking it to a deeper level. But when you first come in, you do tend to get the very stylized, and it's almost like an altar setup, right? This side is masculine, this side is feminine. This is where the god statue goes, this is where the goddess statue goes. And that's the initial kind of presentation of deity that you usually come into contact with first. I honestly, though, feel that that's a little bit detrimental to people, because it's assuming that people can't understand a slightly more complex way of looking at things from the beginning, and I don't think that's fair. I think you should at least give people the option. Be like, yes, you can pull them down in these ways if that helps you, but this is how we feel about it. So, goddess energy. We all come from the goddess. Who's all heard this song before? Anyway, that's one of the first goddess songs I ever ran into. Although I really like the Daughter of the Elements one, which I can't remember exactly how it starts. But yeah. Yay! You came home just in time. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. People still just like logging in right now. This is awesome.
I feel like we need to like unfurl our hands, like kind of like the Grinch smile unfurls every time you say that, like, welcome.
welcome everybody. And this hand motion, apparently, I don't know what this is. I'm like a seal right now.
Yes.
Hi. So Daisy is chasing paper, just so you know. If you hear this, that's
also, do you have Never mind. Never mind.
What?
It solved itself. Carry on.
Oh, okay. So what is goddess energy? I think this is a problem that Cris and I have, right? Because we see the world as being like expansive and multifaceted and all things flow into all things. So trying to get a nice simple explanation for people is difficult. However, for me, goddess energy is kind of like the spirit of something. It can be divine feminine, but what does that even mean? Because that's just how we perceive things, right? And I think, honestly, we label things in order for our sense of ease rather than anything else. It's to make things easier for us on a day-to-day basis, or to categorize things, which when we really get into it's not the deepest truth, but it's perhaps the most workable truth on a day-to-day basis. And we may go deeper in the future with our understanding of what goddess is, but maybe on a day-to-day basis, we just need an accessible energy of goddess. And for people who are having difficulty to connect to the goddess, I think the idea of an accessible energy of goddess is perhaps the most useful. I don't think we need to simplify it right down to certain standards that, you know, some people have done, but accessible is a good option for people who are struggling in the beginning to connect with goddess energy. So getting an idea in your own mind as to what you think goddess energy is probably what I would recommend, because you can listen to 1,000 different people tell you what goddess energy is, and if you don't ask yourself, you're missing out on your own intuition. You're missing out on your own gut. Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? It's Tanya Shasiva, the shaman. It's one of my favorite paintings. There you go.
A really good way to do that, which a lot of people recommend, and you will see recommended very often in the beginning, I think, is meditation or just setting with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think Joey and I would both agree, though, another really good way is just taking a walk through the woods, through the forest, through the streets, outside if you live in a city, whatever it is, but taking a stroll and letting her speak to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely. And the thing about goddess is there are as many representations of goddess as there are peoples, cultures, and societies.
I would say more than.
Yeah. And really, perception is a really interesting thing. So how you perceive something isn't going to be the same as how anybody else perceives something. So to the point where we all perceive color differently on a very, very basic level, right? The way that our eyes perceives color is different to other people. And we all kind of have a generalized idea of what the color blue is, for example, unless we're colorblind, and that's something else. And so we all kind of tend to agree on a general energy. So we all tend to agree with goddess energy being certain things. So it's usually a form of nurturing. I am being very broad now, and we will pick this apart. It's usually a form of nurturing, a form of fertility, a form of beginning, and usually a form of ending, which people don't usually like to look at, but they come together. There is no separation between the cycles, and there is a very cyclic nature to goddess energy, perhaps even more so than the masculine interpretations of godhood. So quite often goddess energy is very much associated with cycles. It can be lunar cycles, but it can also be solar cycles, because there are both lunar and solar deities that are masculine and feminine. And that's a wonderful way of connecting. So Lunar Seedling recommends automatic writing. It's a wonderful way of allowing what you kind of download into yourself to come out. I know Cris does that as well, so maybe Cris will talk about automatic writing a little.
I mean, different people do it for different ways. I know some people can do it in the form of poems and stuff, like they slip into doing it that way, like they'll hear it as it comes to them. Some people will center up and kind of set a space, and then they'll just kind of set their pen down on the paper, and go wherever their hand is led. And then eventually you will start writing words or making pictures or something to that degree. I know before all of my sessions, I will kind of sit down and put pen to paper and wait for a sentence, and then it just kind of will spew out. And sometimes you get images along with that, which help. Or you hear other things, like maybe a song, for instance. But it's kind of like a channel connect there, and then suddenly you're getting all this other stuff too on top of it. So a lot of people think that with automatic writing, it's like just literally what's on the paper. But at least in my own experience, and a lot of people that I know, you gain access to a lot of different things once you get more comfortable within it.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about goddess within people later. That's something that we are going to touch on, but I would rather kind of help people to the idea of goddesshood before we get to that bit. The bit that I will touch on is the idea of the triple goddess, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. So this is an idea which is often presented quite early on with regards to the energies of goddesshood into 3, which is a sacred number in many traditions. It is in the Celtic tradition, for example, but it is in other traditions as well. It's quite, I think the triple goddess is quite, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that is quite a Wiccan introduction to the goddess, because that's where I feel that's where I first saw it in a lot of the Wicca books when I was reading around Wicca in the beginning. And the thing with the triple goddess is it works for a lot of people, but a lot of people, when they get deeper into the practice, they feel like they need more stages. Like they feel like it doesn't quite cover all of the journeys in archetype form as much as it needs to. So there's always going to be many, 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 many more stages than those 3. But a lot of people feel that they need, is it Joanna DeVoe that talks about it more? She was like talking about the different stages of it, and she gave warrior and queen as them.
It might have been. I know I definitely, my mother growing up always spoke of queen stage being a 4th stage anyway. Yeah. But I've definitely heard of others. Absolutely. Yes, maiden, mother, queen, and crone, Caitlin.
Yeah. And some people also see that there being different stages between maiden and mother, which is, I think, where the warrior archetype comes in sometimes. And some people, they're interchangeable.
And we can, exactly, and we can get even more like fluxy with it and just say that at times when you are a maiden, you have crone within you, and vice versa as well. So, and we are mothers to many, and etc. So, yes.
That's where we're going with it.
I jumped ahead.
She jumped ahead. She doesn't like it. I'm like, so these are the archetypes. And Cris is like whistling.
It's hurting, Joey. It's hurting. Stop. Okay.
So, so let's go there, because Cris jumped the gun with that a little bit, but hey, let's go there. So the thing about the energies, the archetypes, is some people do work with them because they find working with those particular archetypes really strengthens their connection to deity, to spirit. But the thing about it is all of these energies really flow into one another anyway at any given point, especially if you work with a shapeshifter energy goddess, which Cris and I think is fair to say we both work with goddesses who shift and who are liminal in the liminal spaces. So the thing about it is they constantly like to play with archetype at any given point. So if you expect them to turn up a certain way, they'll turn up a different way on purpose to challenge perception, because it's a very human thing to try and box energies in. So at any given point, we as human beings can be going through different cycles, which you could attach to the archetypes of different goddess energies, right? So we could be going through a death cycle right now, and I think a death cycle right now is very prominent because of the 2018 into 2019 gateway. So for a lot of people, feels like a death and rebirth energy. So for a lot of us, at least in the northern hemisphere, we're also very heavily into winter right now, which feels very crone-like to a lot of people. That is the natural association that they make. However,
have a good day at work, Harley.
Yep, have fun, Haley. This will be on the channel afterwards, so you can catch up. Don't get into trouble.
Yeah, don't get into trouble. Don't get fired.
But all of these energies flow into one another, both within the deity in question or deities in question, and they also flow into us. And I think at any given time we hold all of these energies within ourselves, and in the same way the goddess holds all those energies within herself. And it's really usually a presentation just for a lesson. Usually it's kind of like they will channel into
working in archetypes, because humans like archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Basically,
goddess, little human.
Yeah,
basically, it's like funneling down little bits of information and working within those archetypes of the lessons that you're usually going through at the time. So it's kind of like accessing a huge database of information, and it's like, right, I need to focus on this bit right now because this is where I am right now. And so the goddess is like, okay, let's work within this archetype, and that's what connection helps. So
yes, Caitlin, humans like their boxes. We're like cats. If it fits, we sit.
Unless you Cris and me and we sit here going, there is no box.
Sprawl out.
Yeah, we're with our cat legs on, like hanging off the bed and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So another thing that that Joey was talking about, death and dying off and everything in the year. Another thing that's interesting to note is that this year is a 3 number, which makes it a goddess number. It makes it a holy trinity. It makes it 3 is normally a number of abundance, and it is the Empress card on tarot. It's also all about abundance. So that's some good energy. So you might be feeling that end of the pickup, like, oh, finally I can breathe, and you can like spin in a field and sing the sound of music if you wish. You don't have to. That's entirely optional.
Please don't. Can we sing Nightmare Before Christmas?
The next video on Cris Ashburn's channel. The hills are alive.
And me following you around with a mallet. Stop. Make it stop. Yes. I think that's very true. That when a lot of people start working with a lot of goddesses who are quite complex, they start with the 3 archetypes. Morrigan is certainly one, and the deeper you get, the more you're like, yeah, no. And she constantly shifts and constantly moves. And there's some people who are like feel that the 9 Morgans of Avalon are associated with it. Some people venomously deny this, but I think it may be left over from myth that we no longer have. So there may originally have been 9 faces, if you like, of the Morrigan, and they were 9 presentations of energies. And if you actually research into them, they're all associated with quite different elements of womanhood, of priestesshood, of representations of what it means to be divine incarnate, or taking on roles of goddess within priestesshood, which is another way of accessing goddess energy, which is the idea of connecting with someone else who is a priestess, or embodying the priestess within yourself. And that you don't have to be a man or a woman to do that. You can embody priestess or priest energy, independent of everything else. So what does that mean? That's, again, something we can argue about at length. Honestly, what a priestess means, it's another title, it's another archetype, and really it's what it intuitively means to you, because there aren't right or wrong answers with
Absolutely.
But usually what that means is to conduit messages from the divine.
Yeah, it's a mouthpiece. A mouthpiece. Yeah. And obviously that word in some within some frameworkings definitely has like protocol and things to initiate into in some, and then there's the word in general and the energy of it, the essence of it, and what it means to you. So just elaborating a bit more on what Joey just said too, that there are those that have sort of like a goddess temples and such, where they go through priestess things, and like Wicca, for instance, has a lot of protocol in terms of that. Different ones depending go into traditional witchcraft as well, depending various things. But when it gets down to it, I think that the common thing that they all have is essentially that they are like the mouthpiece and the hands of whatever they call divine.
Mm-hmm.
They're the middle ground. They're the medium.
So I think a good place to go from there is if someone's to say, okay, so how do I step into the liminal and speak to goddess? How do I conduit? How do I do that? Because I think that I understand when people come to us and they're a little bit like, oh, please just tell us how to do this, because and we're like, we want you to think first and then we'll give you some ideas. So I think it's good for us to talk around that subject a little bit, and say the first thing is, I would honestly throw preconception out the window. That's the first thing I recommend.
Which is easier said than done in a lot of cases also.
Oh, yes. It's a mighty old challenge, but it's worthwhile doing.
Simple sentence, complex living space.
Oh, well. Oh, look. The L word has just popped up for Lilith.
Oh, man.
So that's funny to me because right now we've actually just started the Year of the Goddess on Cris and my podcast.
Yeah.
Cris and my podcast.
Yeah, like we haven't been on here together, you guys, but we have been working together steadily. That's still a thing.
That's where we've been.
I still love her face and work with it daily. I work with your face daily. Just your face.
Just the face.
The rest roams around. We'll get to it later.
I have a perfectly great pair of boobs. Thank you very much. And you know it.
Well, they join us for tea occasionally.
Well, balancing. That's a whole image I didn't need.
Well, they're English boobs. You have to invite them for tea. That's how it works, right?
Yes, that's absolutely how it works. It's a rule.
Yes. I know protocol. A proper tea. That's what you do.
Tea. A high tea. A high tit tea. Anyway. So we actually started Year of the Goddess over on the What the Flux podcast with Lilith. We have started talking. The podcast, by the way, is free. And if you go over, yes, boobs and balls are back. And
okay,
boobs and balls.
Yes.
Boobs and boobs and
sorry, get to Lilith.
Right. So, that's what everyone came for. Everyone will leave now. They're like, they did it, right? We can go. So what the flux, the podcast bit is on SoundCloud. And imagine Betty serving high tit tea. That's what we do. Doesn't everyone in England not do the same thing? Come on. And so over on the podcast, it's free, and we're talking about Lilith for the next 2 months, and we're actually getting deep into the energies of what Lilith is as a dark goddess, looking at the lessons, the messages, the energies. So Year of the Goddess is a thing over on What the Flux podcast, which is run by Cris and I. So you can actually find us together over there, and you can join us in the group and everything if you wish to become part of the What the Flux community, the tribe over there. It's great. So there will be, if Cris wants to link it in the chat, she's probably on that already. Yep. And I'm just trying to read it all. Yes, and so there has been a lot of snake energies. There you go. As a Brit, I can confirm high tit tea is a thing, especially when you accidentally spill it on your boobs. Ow. I mean, that becomes scolding high tea.
There you go.
So the podcast link is in the chat for everybody. If you do want to hear us talk more about Lilith specifically, you can go over to the podcast right now, and we're talking about her for a couple of months. And
first Tuesday of every month is always free podcast to the public. It's always up there. So same place, that channel.
High tit tea. Where was
I like that
was over there?
Now on, you're like, yes, boom.
Hashtag high tit tea is what we are calling this podcast. This live even, sorry. So, okay. It does raise a very interesting point about goddess energy, because that is actually what people like to refer to as dark goddess energy. I don't like calling it dark goddess energy because it becomes this dichotomy thing, and it becomes this good versus evil thing, which is hugely unhelpful.
Anyone who has ever watched us live has probably already heard that whole spiel from both of us at least twice. Including when we've actually used it to title a video and then been like, yeah, so we realized we did that, but
hey, you're on the table, you naughty floof.
Uh-oh.
Hi. Are you going to come over here?
She's living her best life.
You're going to come over here and come on camera. Hi. That's my goddess right there. Anyway.
It's so true.
So sometimes goddess energy is very much shunned, is very much complicated, and has a very complicated history over the development of human culture and human history, and the rise of religion, which did not give feminine energy a place. The world indeed does stop for cats. Are you coming over here? Are you going to show everybody your beautifulness? Are you going to eat some plastic? Are you serious right now? You are not eating plastic.
You're distracted with a live. Now's the perfect chance, Mom.
Yeah, but she's not under the table eating it. She's on the table looking at me. She's this far away trying to chew. You are just cheeky. You are a sauce cat. Hi. Yes, you saucy man. Hi. She's on the edge of the table with her back to me now, just so you all know. The sacred female is maligned, just like the feminine in general is maligned. So we do, unfortunately, live in times where there is conflict around the idea of femininity, what it means to be feminine, what feminine energy really is. Divine feminine and goddess energy does play a part in this, and there has been a surge, a rise in interest in many goddess energies as a result, because it has become a form of resistance. It's become a form of resistance against conforming to values which people think is beneath humanity, regardless of gender. And so looking at paths which put the power back with people who want to affect change in a world which they feel very disenfranchised with is why many people come to witchcraft or the paganism element of witchcraft, and come looking for the divine feminine or what goddess energy means to them. So sometimes goddess energy is very much resistance, is very much rebellion, and it can very much be reclamation. Well, my floof is a girl. My floof is the divine feminine in this house. Even though she's got her bum showing to me right now because she's in a mood, because I wouldn't let her eat plastic. So sometimes goddess energy is about rebellion. It's about rediscovering of what it means to be empowered as a feminine, or the feminine aspects of yourself. It doesn't have to be that you have to be a woman to connect with goddess energy by any means before, you know, anybody gets mad at me. That's not what I'm saying. The feminine and masculine exist within us at all times, regardless of who we are. I like that we're all talking about cats in the chat. You come in, you steal the show, you show me your bum.
So, I don't want to bother. Transition to fast? Is that what we're doing here?
Throw things off the table. Yeah. We need balance and to return to the mother. Well, so the one thing that I will say is we have to be careful of synonymously representing goddess as mother energy and what that means. I absolutely do feel that goddess energy moves through everything, including the earth, the land, the animals. Cats are a gorgeous embodiment of the divine feminine. I would say that they are the divine feminine, and anyone who disagrees better run for it, basically. You're the god, she's the god in our house. So there is a nice returning to balance to honor both masculine and feminine energies within deity, within the land, within ourselves, and To become too enamored with the idea of either or and dichotomy and the idea of separation is an epidemic of our time, and it only gives rise to problems, to be honest. Like the either or dichotomy that happens, I'm right, you're wrong, this way, not that way. I don't know, pitting people against each other because of things that really don't matter when we're all the same on the inside. Pretty much, we're all made of flesh and bone on the inside, and we can appreciate and honor one another even if we don't agree with one another, is perhaps the way forward. And that feels very goddess energy to me, because goddess energy is often silent but receptive when it chooses to be, but it also speaks when it needs to speak, but only when it needs to speak. There is a sovereignty. There is a sovereignty to me very much attached to goddess energy. The human at all needs balance. Cris has gone very silent right now. She's looking at something. What are you looking up?
May or may not be also editing the Weatherflux podcast page. Carry on.
That goddess energy. Stop multitasking.
I don't know how. I'm a Capricorn.
You can read the chat. Read the chat and multitask.
All I do is multitask. No, the chat has gone crazy. It's all yeah.
Oh, I know Chris's faces. She can't hide. I know exactly what that face means.
You know, she's doing something. What is she working on? What is she picking at? Nothing. Don't worry about it. Never mind. Just like do the show, Joey. Don't worry about me. God.
Well, I'm going to ask you what you feel about Goddess and Rebellion now.
Woo! I don't know, man. I mean, because then I just start picking apart the word rebellion.
Then go.
Okay. Well, because first of all, there's like a dichotomy, black and white versus thing that comes up, which is dangerous territory, first of all. Mm-hmm. It's more about a balance of a whole or a totality. Hell talks about that a lot, as she is both sides. And it's more so, I think, less about like a rebelling against one and more of a rebellion towards the limits of self. And that is reflected outward. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I feel like ultimately we can look inward and try and break down our own stereotypes and our own things there. And then it will ripple out naturally. It's a ripple effect. And we're freaking pagans and witches. So of course we're going to. Yes. So I feel like even saying that, even that statement itself could be broken into a bunch of fractured mirror pieces that just reflect back to yourself. And that's not to say that the rest of the world is not responsible for the rest of the world. Obviously we are. They have their own reflections too that they have to answer to. But I think when we're rebelling, we should really ask what we're rebelling against, not necessarily what we're rebelling for. And then through that, we find for. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, it does to me.
Did I just go way too abstract for everybody? I'm sorry.
Well, not me. That's the problem, because I understand what you mean.
And back to the website.
Don't you dare. Get back here. So for anybody who is interested, the next goddess we will be looking at on the podcast will be Hell. That will be March. Yeah. So if you want to come sign up with us and get a good in-depth look at the goddess Hell for March, you can. And Cris, well, that's Chris's power area, and she's going to be outside of her comfort zone talking about it.
Yes, I'm anxious, but also extremely excited. Hell has been poking at me for a good year to do this stuff, so I'm pumped.
Yeah, we'll be doing Lilith for January, February, and March, April will be Hell.
Yeah.
Goddess Hell.
It's gonna be hell.
Auntie Hell. I like how you went smoke and cigarette voice for Hell, because that is her voice.
Well, yeah. Whiskey cigarettes, very much so.
So in that energy that Cris talked about, we also kind of touched on a vibration, which is often that we embody goddess, The goddess within is a reflection of the goddess without, because we are all the universe experiencing itself, right?
Yeah, like you want to rebel against something, rebel against that talk inside your head, and that shit's saying that you're not divine and that you're not, part of goddess herself, whatever her is to you, whatever divine is to you.
So when you start off looking at what goddess means to you, you then realize that you already are a reflection of goddess. So that's important to take on board what your natural intuition has told you that goddess energy entails and embodies, and the things that really matter to you, really, I guess.
Even into the instance that oftentimes, and this isn't always the case, but I would say oftentimes the goddesses that we are drawn to, different pantheons and such, like the things that they represent to us are often things in ourselves that we wish were stronger, quote unquote, things that we want to grow. So, yeah.
They're asking you where you're smudging fan.
I have to see what you can see. This is turkey feathers that was given to me with flicker feathers that were also gifted to me. I used to dance in powwows as a teenager. So this is custom made for me. I'm sorry. I can't tell you where to get it.
So something that came up as I think is quite important is the question, why do I encounter massive resistance when I try to connect to a goddess? I think the interesting thing in that sentence is a goddess.
That's what I hung on to, yeah.
Can you tell us which goddess?
Yeah, or is there a specific one?
Or is it
and
just
you're maybe
goddess?
Asking like the gallery for someone to step forward?
Because we can talk about that, but I just would like to know if it's a specific goddess that you've tried to connect to, or I will say that our preconceptions get in the way.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that happens with ancestors too. Working with ancestors and like that ancestral energy, there's a lot of stuff that is like our preconceptions and our own shadows in terms of family and stories that have been handed down, et cetera, that often gets in the way. Or
so
how we flavor things.
I'll tell you a story which may or may not help. I hope it helps.
Ooh, story time.
It's story time.
Okay, go ahead.
Joey is a conduit.
I knew that story.
I'm giving context to the story.
Okay.
Goodness, Capricorn, honestly. Joey is a conduit, and this is just something Joey naturally is. I'm talking myself in the third person, no idea why. That's how we started, so that's where we're going with it. This is just one of my natural abilities, and it's not that everybody contacts deity the same way. It doesn't. So some people will connect to one or two deities their entire life, and that will just be how they connect. And some people connect in different ways, and I think we'll talk about that more in depth in a bit, about how people actually like perceive deity. Joey never had very much issue connecting with any deity, to be honest. I can channel really easily. I can connect to different energies and disconnect from them, honor them, and then remove myself from that energy. And then it came to doing a set for somebody for goddess Aphrodite. And man, did I have resistance to goddess Aphrodite. I didn't know if I could do it because I had all these preconceived ideas in my head. Has anybody seen the Xena Hercules series from back in the day?
Yes.
When Aphrodite was a sorority sister in a pink nightgown with this crazy blonde wig thing. Yeah, that was in my head. And that kind of like mean girl, being vicious to other women energy, that kind of. And what I had to do, honestly, is I had to deconstruct not only my own biases, but the patriarchal version of the myth telling in order to connect to the energy of the goddess behind the pink teddy. Xena references. I'm here for it. Yes.
Okay, wait a minute. I just need to like, in the beginning, if you guys go back and listen to the theme song of Xena, particularly the first season, there's a part in it where it's like dun, 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 that dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
If you listen closely, you can hear them yell Tortuga, which basically means turtle. I don't know why. I heard it once and I can never unhear it again. So to me, Xena's just yelling turtle. You're welcome. Go forth and spread that knowledge, please.
Hera was a problem from those shows as well, because Hera is another one that the Greek pantheon is terrible for the Greek goddesses. And the presentation of them is just dire. And there was all this patriarchal myth telling from the Greeks that came about, trying to lessen these goddesses and make them some of the things that to this day are used to deride females, like gossipy and jealous and all this stuff, right? So I had to clear my own energy funk that was getting in the way of connecting to the energy behind Aphrodite. I then had to look at where my own shadows were poking me with regard to sexual liberation and sexual freedom and stepping into one's sexuality in different ways. I had to look at myself in order to better understand why I was coming into resistance about goddess energy, because it begins within yourself. Now, it may be that different goddesses work with different people at different times in their life for reasons of their own. And it may be that some of us think we know what's best for ourselves, but we don't. And my first piece of advice for anybody who's like, I've been trying to connect to a very specific goddess and nothing's happening, is do what Cris said earlier, which is step into the gallery, step into the council, ask for the goddess to come forward who wishes to impart wisdom to you, who wishes to speak to you. Make it honorific rather than demanding. Make it opening and accepting and questioning and seeking and passionate rather than narrow vision of what you think you need. Because often we think we know what's best for us. We have no clue.
And another thing too is if something shows up, someone shows up and you are taken aback by it and maybe you're a little scared, I would try your best to hear them out. Because a lot of times we'll get the side of a goddess that we don't expect, and maybe it's a little more confrontational, or I know there's people who have attempted to step to hell and they basically get her in their face, or her as a rotting corpse in their face, or her completely naked in their face, or whatever they're uncomfortable with in their face. And it's sort of a challenge to look past that and into her eyes and see truth. To be able to do that, because if you can do that with them, you know, it's the path to doing it with yourself.
So there's a question right here. Have either of you found jealousy as a trait of any god or goddess?
I mean, for me personally, the ones that I work with, no. I know that Joey's experienced it though.
So the thing about jealousy, so the thing about any emotion is that the problem is that human beings have this set idea of what a particular energy is. And they have set value judgments to what an energy is. Okay. So jealousy is a good one. Like, people are like, jealousy is bad. Well, no, jealousy can be alchemized into something. Jealousy is still a lesson of self, the same as any other emotion. So if you yourself, and we'll talk about deity in a second, but if you yourself are feeling jealous of what somebody else has, that is showing you a shadow of yourself where you feel you are lacking. And it gives you a direction to work on yourself. If you get poisoned by any emotion, regardless of whether humanity labels it good or bad, you become off balance, you become off kilter. Any emotion can throw you through a loop at any given point. Now, do I feel that certain deities come across as jealous or possessive? Maybe. I think possessive is better, because jealous kind of is like to covet what someone else has. And sometimes I find them, it's not that they're jealous of what someone else has, it's that they're territorial with those that they are protective over for whatever reason. The Morrigan is territorial. She can be very territorial. And she's never jealous. She's never petty. She's never, I have never seen her to devolve into that. But the thing is with the Morrigan, and I think many goddesses like her, and by like her, I mean they have that primal energy, that very over-encompassing energy. They're shifters, they're liminal, they're very ancient, and Hecate is one. and I'll talk about Hecate and the Morrigan in a minute. When they are both that, shivers. When they are both that ancient, they have been around for a very long time, like longer than the mythology even presents, to be honest with you. I find them to be primal. Cris and I have a theory about primal goddesses. Are you okay with me talking about?
Well, wait a minute. I just wanted to add in, actually, with Hecate, I haven't had that experience. So again, I'm pointing out they come to different people differently. Hell possessive. Hell for me is kind of like eyebrow raise, choose them if you want, but we'll see how it goes. Like, this is on you, not me.
Yeah.
In my own personal experience. And with Hecate, actually, Hecate for me, I think, is very particular about the people that she shares space with, but that doesn't necessarily mean everyone. I think that with her, it's actually more rare to find someone that she's like, no, not with them. In my experience with it, like, her and Hel get along fine. I work with Odin. She and Odin, no problem. Never had an issue.
So Cris and I have a theory, and we got energies and spirits telling us about the idea of 6 primal goddesses, which is very interesting because that's how the podcast is ended up being, is there's going to be 6 goddesses that we cover over the year. And I honestly feel like it's not that they're possessive particularly, it's just that they have very, very particular personalities. And I feel that the Morrigan and Hecate have very specific personalities. And for me, for a very long time, Hecate was very quiet. She would come, she would be present, but she wouldn't particularly talk. And it felt a little bit like, you have chosen to walk the path of the Morrigan, and as such, that is your path. And at times Hecate has spoken to me, and Hecate did give me some beautiful poetry in the end, and it was kind of a moment of, I gifted this to you at this time because it needs to be said, but it's not like a permanent relationship. And I honestly feel like the reason is because they're so primal, they're so all-encompassing, they take a lot of time if they are your primary goddess, like a lot of time. And it's not that you can't work with other deities, because I conduit for other deities all the time with the Morrigan, and she is not jealous of that. She opened me up to be a conduit, to do that, to assist other people in their path, be it through conduiting sessions to help other people, or be it through physical products to honor other forms of deity. I'm going to answer a couple of questions about the Morrigan, if that's okay, Cris, before while Cris is looking at the website she's not supposed to be looking at.
I know what you're talking about. Carry on, but yes, please go ahead.
Don't lie to me, because I see you. So the Morrigan has been silent with me for a while, but I've honestly had a disconnect with myself this past year, and I may not have been open for messages. So something that I've found that happens with the Morrigan is she goes through cycles of waning and waxing with people, and sometimes she becomes really silent, and she becomes the silent watcher, which is one of her titles. And people struggle with this often because she's very full on. You get lots of messages, you getting a lot of energy, and her energy is very powerful, like tangible, very real. And then you'll go through periods of silence while she sits back and allows you to digest the lesson or learn the lesson. And a lot of people feel the disconnect there, and that's kind of a testing thing that happens with the Morrigan. Now I will say, when I was in periods of like retreat because I was sick or because I was just not listening, the Morrigan found other people, and the Morrigan was like, tell this bitch this, please. This bitch has turned her ears off, she's not listening right now, I will get a message to her.
Oh yeah, the Morrigans used me to do that to multiple different people who work with her even. And I'm like, I don't even work with Kel. What do you, me? Why? Because she will listen to. Go tell her, like, fire raging sensation, like, you know, that like crackling, like when you're in an inferno, that sound just everywhere, like, okay.
Yep.
So, and
But sometimes it's more about us, basically. We disconnect and we're like, they're not talking to us, and they're like, bitch, if you would listen, if you would just listen. And sometimes it's distress. Like sometimes, you know, we've got ourselves into a place of distress and we can't. And at that time, sometimes basically Goddess will tap other people, give them dreams. When I was going through the trauma at the end of the last year and I felt completely alone, I, no kidding, had an experience where 6 different people, not even kidding, 6 different people who didn't know one another all had the same message from the Morrigan and were like, Joey, this is weird, but I feel that I need to tell you this. And I'd be like, you're the 3rd person to tell me the exact same message. And then there was the 6th person, and it was madness. But it was beautifully confirming, and the Goddess will do that. You will get huge moments of confirmation that just like you feel it in your body and you get chills because you can't deny that synchronicity. And you know, you can't deny 6 people who've never met, who don't talk, all having the same conversation, the same words with the Morrigan, for me, pretty much down to the words being used. So it was one of those huge moments of confirmation. My husband will have nightmares of Morrigan when I need to hear something. That's really fun.
I mean, I feel like Joey and I, it's really funny because like hell will come to her. Like she's seen hell like peeking in her window before. Like, oh, okay. Hey, Cris, you're not paying attention. Or like, I'll get Morrigan signs or like feel Morrigan or something when I'm talking to her, and it'll just like start coming out my mouth. And it's definitely something where if it's easier to go that route, it's going to happen. And a lot of, I think, transformational oriented goddesses, not to say that all of them don't have that within them, but the ones that are much more focused on it will work with the system and be like, okay, you don't want to flow here? That's fine. I'll just shift and here. How about that?
I seem to go through the same thing with Freya, but a hectic daily life, it's hard to stay open with her. Freya is a secondary goddess in my life, permanently now. Freya cuts me. Like every time, like most gods and goddesses, they're like, I would like a little blood sacrifice the first time you do a set for me, and that's fine. That's not. Freya is every damn time, and she's like, damn right. I can hear her right there. She's like, damn right.
Yeah. Lady Raven says, am I the only one who has yet to be terrified by these goddesses? Honestly, hell did not terrify me.
No, I wasn't terrified by Babe, and she showed up in some pretty gruesome ways. They're quite similar, Babe and Hell, by the way.
Yeah, but when I say that they're going to come up and get in your face, like that doesn't mean you have to be scared, but it just means that a lot of people will be.
Unless fear
is their initial reaction.
Yeah. Unless fear is the lesson. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm weird. I get terrified when they turn up in maiden form. That's a lesson.
But see, that's the thing too, is I think that's why they come to us in different ways. They play like puzzle games oftentimes in the beginning.
Yep.
As a kind of like, you know, who am I really? Feel past it. One, because I feel like when something is a puzzle, you put more effort into it, so it means more to you when you finally figure it out. But also it's sort of a challenge to see if you will look past it.
And grow. Growth is a big thing with goddess energy too.
Because there's an element of it in this that if you're always used to sort of staying in the same place, you have to prove to them that you're willing to move.
Oh boy. Yes, wow.
Yeah. May have just gotten told that. Carry on.
Morrigan had me move, all right. Fear is the mind killer. I see you, June reference. I love that reference. I've used it quite a few times.
Yes.
I will not fear. I will move past my fear. Yeah, it's awesome. I love that as an energy. It's great.
I think that there's a lot of fear built up around sort of goddess energy and god energy, I think, to some extent. But I think it comes up more with goddess energy because we are used to sort of this dialogue of Christianity. And hey, guys, for those of you who don't realize, I grew up in a multi-religious household. Like, my mom is pagan and my dad was Southern Baptist. So I have really not a whole lot against Christianity. I'm fine with it. But what I am saying is, because the sort of mainstream is very much about God this, God that, even if it's specifically a Christian God or not, I think a lot of people find it easier to think of sort of a father figure. But to go to the mother figure, who sort of been downplayed or undermined a lot of times, or erased out in some cases, it's different. It challenges them, whether consciously or subconsciously, I think. And there is a sort of fear of remembering, I think, that happens. What if I go and I see something that I can't unsee? What if I go and I feel something that I can't unfeel? What if I discover a piece of me in it?
What if I am changed?
And as much as that's like a yes, it's also like a, wow, that shit got real fast.
Oh, well, that's a good point for goddess energy. Shit gets real fast. Do you have any advice for working with more than one deity and keeping things balanced? That might be to you. You might be, I mean, I have a completely different system, so.
Right. For me, they all sort of have their different roles in my life. And I think when I listen to them in terms of that, it sort of balances itself. I think a lot of times to have multiple deities, unless this is something that like people are really pulled to do in heart space and keep up with a lot of this stuff, like the daily things, like the daily pujas, for instance, that I know some people do to whatever you want to call it, but it's essentially that. Or like, keeping all the altars clean daily, or the daily offerings of food or whatever. Like, to me, that isn't what serves me, and it never has been. And that's not really what they want from me. They want song, they want thought, they want me to recognize them and see them in the world. And that isn't necessarily me setting up my altar. That's me being their altar and seeing that the world is their altar. So one part of that for me is realizing the connections, first of all, and the fact that you don't really have to be one place or another to balance it. They are sort of flowing into everything already, including your own self and your own life. And so it makes it less about, oh, I got to go here and I got to go there and I got to make this and mark this checklist off and this checklist for Odin and this checklist for Hel. And instead it's like, I am the checklist. Living my life is doing that in honor of them. It's much like with your ancestors. How you carry on is for them as much as it is for you. And as much as you are a living ancestor for the next person coming or the next generation, have kids yourself. So it's a connection point. It's realizing that you are the center point in the web, the sort of firing neuron, if you will, that's connected to all things.
Beautiful.
So it's really not so much of a balancing act as it is one big glorious act.
Mm-hmm.
That you
absolutely
get to
perfect. Like, I'm gonna just I'm just gonna clap right now. I think that applies to working with goddess energy in the abstract too. Like, the more that you embody something, the more that you honor that in embodying it. So the more that you evolve, the more that you grow, the more that you own your own shit, the more that you learn the lessons, the more that you are honest about the things that you're going for, the more that, as Cris likes to put it, you are fiercely vulnerable in your lessons, the more that you stand for what you believe in, the more that you are passionate about the things you are emboldened by, the more that you share that with the world unabashedly, the more that you refuse to conform to a standard which is not yourself and embrace yourself for who you are. Yes?
Sorry. Also, to Sarah, she's like, so all I have to do is work out what goddesses are with me. Not necessarily. Do you want to, or do you feel like you should? Because that would be the first question I would ask you. Because that depends on if you have to. Some people do worship and work with goddess on a global scale, on a universal scale. Some people work with a different archetype of her. Some work with her specifically by a certain name. And like, that depends on, hard polytheist, soft polytheist, pantheist. Like, what are you? What do you feel like you are pulled to do? There is no should. What do you feel? So that's that. But yes, I evening a week to a particular day, light a candle incense and sing a word of honor. Yes, absolutely. You could be more structured in that way. And if that works for you, absolutely. For me, I prefer to sing as I'm doing stuff.
Yeah. I'm a voice witch too, really. So I prefer sound, I prefer words, I prefer storytelling, I prefer poetry, I prefer drum ritual. But then, of course, I physically make products to honor deity in all forms. This is one of the things that I've been called to do. So every time I pull on that energy for someone, I'm honoring that energy for someone. So every time I ask Freya for assistance or knowledge or strength over the last few weeks, all she says to me is back to your roots, but not in that way. Ideas, ? So that to me feels like Yggdrasil. You feel like Yggdrasil to you rather than ancestry? Well, it's all tied up in the same energy, I know.
Yeah.
I feel like you need to go visit the Norns. That's what I would advise you to do. That's the vibe I'm getting. If Freya is side-eyeing me, I'm not allowed to give you too much. It's your lesson to learn.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do. I would journey to Yggdrasil.
I mean, I would ask what your roots are. What do you consider to be your roots?
Growing up Christian can cause guilt and resistance towards goddess energy. And that is how earlier we were talking about how you will be a reflection and you will be a resistance to deity and things that get in your own way are a part of you. That can be part of it. Some things can help you. You might find that a ceremony of leaving behind your past in terms of that might be helpful to you. Cutting the cord to outmoded ideas that still hold a little fear deep down, even though that you've moved past it. Something like that, where you sever that energy and allow it to be filled by something that serves you better.
A death rite, essentially.
I wish I could connect visually. I have aphantasia, so all I can connect to is energy and how things feel. I may get pops of color, but that's about it. So the thing is there, I want you to realign your neural thought patterns for a minute. How beautiful is it to see the world in pops of color? How beautiful is it to see energy and feel energy? Some people might have trouble getting that you yourself can sense. I feel like you need to honor the way that you interact with energy because we all interact with energy differently. It all flows into one another. And I feel like the kind of the energy there is that you're getting in your own way because of you're worried that the way that you perceive energy is not as quote unquote good as how someone else sees it. So I would celebrate the way that you see things and feel things and see where that takes you. That's really important for all of us, actually, when interacting with any energy, not just goddess energy, but to celebrate who we are and who we have been made and who we have become and who we grow into and continue to grow into. Because celebration of self is an act of love, of self-love, and resisting all the conditioning that tells us that we're not enough. Okay, so how about we talk about how we conduit goddess energy, what that looks like, feels like, and how we do that. Do you want to go first or shall I go first? You are welcome.
Oh, sure.
I'm responding to the chat. Do you want to go first?
I'll go ahead and go first. I think obviously I've already said a little bit about how I see it in the connections and living my sort of day-to-day life and how I work with that. But something that's a little more structured is how I do my sessions, actually. So for those of you who don't know who I am, because it's been a little while since I've been on Joey's channel, I am a death midwife, a medium. I do tarot readings. I am a spiritual mentor, psychopomp, various things. And I work predominantly with death and death energy, death goddesses. And as a result of that, a lot of times when I'm doing my sessions for someone and creating a sort of healing space or a womb, I will call in Hel in the beginning and Odin and Hecate. I ask Hel to make me a bridge to connect the living and the dead, because in some ways I see her as a sort of, this is a very structured way of seeing it, I guess, but she's a sort of warden stalking those corridors, if you will. So she's very like overseer. And so for me, I ask her to make me that bridge, make me that overseer, so that I can connect.
Mm-hmm.
And then I speak with Odin, who is known for being extremely eloquent. He doesn't always speak often, but when he does, you better listen. And
yeah.
I ask him to guide my words so that they may fall where they are most needed, where they do the most good, essentially, whatever that is to the client. And then I call in Hecate and I ask her to make it a womb space, one of healing and safety, where the client feels held. And I ask her also to make me a torchbearer so that the light can illuminate the issues and shed clarity moving from there on what decision they'd like to make. And then from there is when I step into, working with tarot and automatic writing and stone pulls and hand selected incense and et cetera, et cetera. I sort of build a map, if you will, energetically to read for each person. But one of the ways that I predominantly work with them is that when I do my client stuff, I bring them in very actively and bring my ancestors in and then extend it to the clients and whoever they work with and have with them, for that matter. So in that instance, again, I've never really had like a jealousy thing, because it's a sort of, I'm inviting you into my home. Mm-hmm. You are my gracious, like, honored guest, so please come in. So it's not really a problem because respect is given there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's I think predominantly the biggest way for me.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do before I describe how I do this is I actually got nudged to do a little exercise with everybody who's here. So we're going to do it together. We're going to get proactive right now. So something that I think is very important is to get into the idea of you being a liminal being. You are somebody who can step between worlds. You can connect between worlds. So I invite every single one of you to consider yourself as a liminal being right now. I invite you to tell the universe your name. Not out loud unless you wish to. You can say it out loud. But in your own mind's eye, silently if you wish, out loud if you wish, tell the universe who you are. It can be a feeling. It can be a name with a feeling behind it. And then I want you to invite goddess energy down through all the tendrils of the spiritual ecosystem into yourself right now. I want you to realize that you are connected. You have always been connected. You always will be connected, and allow your blockages to dissolve away. Feel. Whatever energies come through, whatever energies you feel are legitimate. They're truthful. You don't need to worry about what you've been told to feel. You don't need to worry about what your neighbor is feeling. Just feel. Bring that energy, that color, that light, that image, that sound, that breath into your being. Feel enclosed by it. Feel it wrap itself around you. Feel the positive, connected, warm embrace of Goddess. Feel it connect you to eons of history, spreading out in all directions, across all lands, all times, limitless. Know that this limitlessness is a seed within yourself. the seed of potential to be whoever you choose to be, and that power is yours. Feel that warm embrace of Goddess fueling that seed within yourself. Become. Know that you can overcome all obstacles. You were born to be who you were born to be in this incarnation, and you can choose to bloom. Take a deep breath in, push your energy down, and ground. Breathe out. Take another deep breath in, push your energy down, and ground. Breathe out. Take another deep breath in, push your energy down, ground, breathe out. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is conduiting. So as I was doing that, talking you through it, I was channeling through what was coming. And sometimes the best thing I can think to do is to show you, to speak to you, how it comes through me. And this is one of the ways in which it does. This is why we do journey work. Cris and I do journeys to help people.
I think oftentimes it's much easier to show than explain. That's something I certainly find difficult at times, is to try to explain what goes on. Like, for instance, when I bring in the ancestors for people, you know, I can't make you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to feel it. You have to be there and feel it.
Yeah. You are welcome. See, when it was coming to me and I was feeling arms around me, it looked like the universe. It looked like night sky and cosmos and nebulas and that sort of things. That's okay. We're still going. We'll be here for a little while yet. You know how we do. But the replay will be up. You can.
Yes.
Aww, I made people cry. Yes, it's usually Cris that makes people cry, and I can't do it. Sorry, that's mean, isn't it? But I'm glad. I'm glad that it moved you. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, tears are a good thing. Transmutation.
So sometimes
watering
the best
future
way
soil.
to experience Goddess is to feel it, to be open to it.
Yeah.
And to feel your connection to a spiritual ecosystem, which you already are connected to.
Yeah.
And the way that you perceive it is legitimate. You are most welcome.
Absolutely. And that is something where there'll be something where you have to kind of like move your consciousness over to the side. It's kind of like, you know, if you were sitting on like a love seat or a settee, right? And there's only room for you and maybe one other person, but you're sitting in the middle and you're used to kind of driving this boat. You sort of have to like shift your consciousness like over here so that you can kind of like, oh, okay, yep. And then it's all, yeah, okay, here. And it's something that you get better at with time. It's something that the more that you're in that in-between space, the more used to it you get. And you're like, oh, this is what we're doing now. But at first it seems sort of unnatural to do. But I think it's one of the most natural things is to have that sort of side view.
This is why Cris and I sometimes find it a bit difficult to teach people, because Cris and I have got to the stage where we can just be like, and we're in the because literally, I think when you work with quote unquote dark goddesses anyway, you tend to be a little bit closer to it anyway, because they are shapeshifting.
Well, they sort of don't go, right, then take your time and ease up and have some tea and then we'll do, you know, begin our session. It's like, no, they grab you by the scruff of the get out of here. Like, okay.
Yeah. And so different goddesses will approach you differently with that kind of drawing in. But I find quote unquote dark goddesses tend to just drop you in the ocean. There you go. Quite literally in Hell's case.
Warm hands are generally the sign of a healer, Gabby. Just saying. If you have solar hands, I guess you could call it. Like your hands are two freaking suns on the end of your. That's usually a healer, someone who works with their hands.
Mm-hmm.
Massage, Reiki, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. I will get heaty hands at certain points, but it's sometimes it's very specific.
And some people feel it in a different way too. I've definitely had people who have like a minty sort of effect. Like they get like cool hands.
Sorry.
And they have just sort of a different approach to things.
If you get jazz hands, you need to be on stage.
Yes.
It's a sign.
Liza, I'm coming.
Da, 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 da.
They had it coming. They had it coming. They only had themselves to blame.
And then we channeled. And then we conduit. And you will never be the same. What if your hands go ice cold?
Oh my gosh. What if your hands go ice cold? You might have frostbite. No, I'm just kidding.
Spirits, probably.
If your hands go ice cold, yeah, it could be spirit stuff. And as I said, there are different forms of energy. People feel it in different ways. But I have always been told that if it's like hot hands, oftentimes that's someone who has a lot of like healing stuff. They work predominantly with their hands. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That song is life. Yes.
It is now. I like how we went from, this is typical of Cris and me, right? Like from full on channeling goddess energy, deeply serious, to jazz hands, Chicago.
Yeah, well, laughter is medicine too. It is. I think sometimes, like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a place to take things serious, but I think that you can have laughter and still take something serious, quite frankly. I think that laughter oftentimes
on our ass on purpose.
I think that laughter oftentimes in the darkest of times we turn to it because it helps ease things. It helps away. Laughter is that sort of easing of the sharpness of the shards that cut us. Doesn't mean they don't cut us, but it makes it a lot easier to handle, doesn't it?
That's an interesting question. Can parasitic spirits pretend to be goddess? The energy is incredibly different. I think the easiest way to tell is that I have never come in contact with a goddess energy who is small and mean and wants to drain you, which is what parasitic means, right? Goddess energy is empowering over. It's kind of like it's more like all this energy, you can't take it in, so it becomes a little bit more confined, so you can take it in. Parasitic energy is more like a hard little rock, like bashing you upside the head, trying to drain you. That's how the energies feel differently to me.
Like, let me in.
Yeah,
let me in. It's like the Three Little Pigs story.
Yeah,
but the wolf is not subtle in the least.
Oh, you
it thinks it is, but it's not.
Sniffles.
Yes.
Over to the side of the table. I'm sorry, Mrs.
Okay, I noticed my hands get warm when I'm working on knit or crochet commission projects. These projects I only do with good intentions and love. Yeah, well, that's a way that you work with your hands. That's the thing that you're putting into the world. You're manifesting, of course.
Also, you can call on your guides at any point, your ancestors, those that love you, to make sure you are protected. I will say, Cris and I have a video on this channel, if you haven't seen us talk before, where we talk all about protection magic. So after we're done, if you
I think there's two videos.
Oh, I think there is. I think there's one on yours.
I think it's a two-parter, which means it's like 4 hours of nothing but protection.
Yeah. So if you're worried, after this, there is 4 hours of protection magic where Cris and I talk to you about every element that we can think of.
And we get pretty detailed in different methods and things as well. So
yeah. So if you're really worried about that, there is a video for that. We covered that. We got you.
Also, if you guys like seeing us together, there is I know it's on my channel. I think Joey has one too, of where it's just us.
An
having
archive.
conversations, because there's like 50 some now. There's a lot of them anyway. And there's also the podcast, which we just talked about. So yeah.
Cool. So we're actually in the last 30 minutes now.
Yes.
So are there any questions? Quid pro quos?
Questions?
Queries?
Cigar,
Requests, you know.
Yeah. No, I do. Jen said, if you encounter a spirit who wants you to do harm or anything negative, it's not who they say they are. I think you should always ask them who they are anyway. I mean, it's instinct to ask. Goddesses might not always tell you, but they'll give you a feeling, I think. But I think, honestly, you trust your instinct. Trust your instinct.
You're going to come on in. Come on in.
That was kind of like the whole where we were talking about putting our consciousness to the side and listening. Like, you're going to get something that comes in immediately at you. Trust it. That's before your programming kicks in. Whatever that first thing was, trust it.
Trust your instincts, your intuition, and your first gut feeling. Yeah, absolutely. Any questions?
Because here's the thing. Even if it is something that maybe is... even if it's something that maybe feels harmful to you and it doesn't turn out to be that, either way, you are not comfortable with working with it yet. So you are allowed to lay down that boundary and get there. Exercise your own personal power in that.
Songs of Shades is not currently available as an ebook because of the copying thing. Have you got your other copy right next
Songs
to you?
of Shades.
If you contact me privately, I will do it for you specifically. So send me a message on Facebook, and we'll talk about that.
Yes.
And I'll do it for you specifically. I'm not going to do it en masse because there are problems with basically people sharing files. But if you want to, if you want to contact me directly, I'll do it for you as an ebook specifically.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Because I understand that to Australia is crazy. Plus, Australian custom borders, they seize so much stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if
I have heard stories of how absurd that is.
I literally have gotten to the point where every single Australian package that goes from the store, I spellcast the fuck out of it.
Let's see. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts and connections between blood, water, and the goddess.
Well, Joey is doing this on Patreon right now, all about blood. Well,
yes.
I have thoughts and feelings. Is it okay if I go first? Can I?
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Can I? So, water is the universal conduit to the realm of the deity of the other world in the Celtic tradition. So, passing through water is a very traditional method to going into the realm of spirit, and it's actually an element that can really easily conduit you into the other world and into that shift of energy when you're journeying. And blood and water are not too dissimilar with the kind of the way that they flow, that blood is basically the lifeblood, the life river that flows through our physical incarnation of being, and is traveling nutrients to all parts of the self. Bye. Thank you for being here for so long. Yes. So water is definitely, to me, very much a conduit. It's an energy of goddess that often we travel in between. It's very liminal energy, water. Water as well is perhaps, in terms of magic, it's like my most serious healing magic. And so if, deep serious energy for water. Blood is a very interesting one because what blood actually means shifts and changes depending on where we're at in our journey, where we're at in our goddess energy, where we're at in even our like blood cycles, our moon cycles, right? Because for anybody who doesn't know, I've been going to Red Tent since I moved locale, and a red tent is basically when different women meet up And they celebrate each other's moon time, moon blood periods, cycles, in a world which often treats it as dirty and disgusting. So it's honoring something and fighting back against that conditioning. And also it's a safe space to honor other women and things. And it's been hugely powerful to reconnect to the blood and the womb space for me, which is something that I struggled with because I struggled with mother energies for reasons of my own. So blood has become connective. It has become that which flows through me and flows through you, and we honor each other for that sentience, for that sacredness, and honor that within ourselves. Within a morganic path, it's also blood frenzy, it's also blood sacrifice, it's also the fire in the blood, what you would sacrifice for, what you would bleed for, what you would give your last blood drop for. Freya does that too, as we have daughter of Freya in here too. Freya is very much along those lines too, like, what would you bleed for? And when you really think about that phrase, it becomes multifaceted. It becomes so different over so many different times. So I'll stop and let Cris talk.
To me, the significance of blood and water are one and the same for me. I mean, goddess being the land, water being the veins that run through. They are her blood, they are our blood, they connect. So for me, there's that whole thing. All parts are sacred. It's flow, it's movement, and it's also the past moving forward as well. Like there's something about the momentum in that that I think is really sacred and an important element to work with her. But again, I always take it to like ancestry. So for me, it's definitely where the past and the future connect. Quite literally. Also,
I do have a really one of my favorite blog posts talks about what it means to birth, what it really means to birth, and what birth energies really are. I can't remember the link off by hand, but it's, if you go on starryeyesupplies.com/blog and search in birth, it will bring it up. And that kind of covers that a little bit more too, if that's something you want to read more about. So I've been working with my dark goddess for 3 years, but I still feel a little disconnected from her. I'm not sure if it's me and I need to put in more effort, or if she's staying distant for a reason. Your first thought was that it was you. I think it is you, but not as you think it's you.
Yeah.
So often, what's happening is we are being challenged. Now, the Morrigan does this thing, like I said earlier, where she does her silent watcher mode and she gets hella distant. And to me, it never bothered me in the slightest, because I do this as a human being. I'm like, I'm in hermit mode right now. I'm not peopling. I'm digesting my lessons. I'm off, like, doing stuff for the store. And people are like, bitch, where you been? And I'm like, oh, a week has passed. Maybe I should check in with, that's something I should do. And it's not like me being like, fuck people. It's me being in my own head. #Virgo. And I have to remind myself. And so when the Morrigan did it to me, I was just like, oh, she's just been just like me, so I can't really complain. But some people get really disconnected. Some people get really disconcerted. And some people really freak out about it. And that is actually a lesson of self. And honestly, there's something in there, a shadow to look at. Exactly. It's a lesson and a shadow to look at, and to see where you feel disconnected and why, and to feel the ways in which you intuitively get back to a sense of self. And getting back to a sense of self reflects outward into the world, like we talked about, as within, so without.
I'd like to answer Karen real quick, because she asked a little bit ago. She said, in your sessions, would you be able to tell me what ancestors are around me and who might be able to help me? Yeah, actually, I have a session built specifically around that. It's called Ancestral Wisdom. And I will actually call them in and talk to them and speak with them and get what their message is for you, what their specific medicine and, you know, sort of element, I guess you could say, that they bring to your life is, and how they help you and what the outcome would be. That's what the Ancestral Wisdom session is built off of. So, absolutely.
Hey, baby boo. Hi. Come on. Come on. Damn it. Don't jump off. Just come a little bit closer and let everyone see your beautiful face.
Ooh, we get to see Floof. No, denied.
She got this close, like her tail was just here. And I was like, and then, yeah.
Yeah, Jen has had one, actually. Does that session include Ancestors Unknown? Yes. Yeah, it does. You know, I will say with any medium that you work with, I can't always pull like a specific. So if you're coming with like Uncle Joe in mind, like that's awesome. If Uncle Joe doesn't want to talk, I'm not going to make him. But you can call out to Uncle Joe and ask him to come forward. And by all means, he'll be welcome to come forward. Not to say that you have Uncle Joe or that you want to do that. But also, yes, links are below. But also on top of that, I work with him on a global scale as well. It's not just an ancestor. Oftentimes we think about our immediate, and it's more than that. Our ancestors are in everything. It could be the tree outside our window. Our ancestors are broken down into the ground. Their bones are the dirt we walk on. So in many aspects, yes, Joey didn't know hers.
No.
I worked with her.
I also had a resistance to mine because I had a disconnection from my immediate family. So I had this very wrong perception that I couldn't connect with my ancestry, or they wouldn't want to connect with me because I was disconnected from my bloodline in a physical, tangible sense. So honestly, guys, all your ancestry questions, check out Chris's channel. Go get a session from Cris. Go talk to Cris.
And there's always my page. I do a lot of videos that are ancestry based and such as well.
Yeah, because I really want to keep this to the goddess subject for this one.
Yeah.
So if you are really interested in what Cris does,
I do have answers to all of those things that are in chat right now, and really want to answer them right now. But it's Joy's channel, and we need to stay goddess focused. But yes, go look at my channel. Go look at the Patreon. Check those things out. There are answers to them there.
Yeah.
Gives me food for thought.
Come on.
You're welcome, Justin.
Tail. I got the tail on camera. I will say as well, of course, if you are struggling with conduiting and goddess energies too, I do offer her service as well.
Yes.
It's not ancestor based, it's god and goddess based. So that's all right. You can get distracted. We don't mind. But Cris has this information. She has services.
It's my favorite topic to talk about, guys. Really.
So there you go.
That and death, and they run together. So yay for both of these topics.
But I just want to know if there are any more goddess questions before we just round up, because I want to make sure we answered everything that we can think of to answer for people who are struggling with goddess energies.
We talked about how to approach the energy. We talked about if you needed one specific or not, how to work with them simultaneously.
We did a live conduiting, so there's that.
Yep. Let's see. What about, well, we touched a bit on offerings and things too to do in their honor. Anything else? What are ways that having a goddess has changed your life, Joey?
Oh, good question. Good question. I feel like I need to applaud the question. My Virgo is like, yes, bitch. Okay.
I'll thank you. I'll thank you.
Are you going to keep coming up here and fussing me and jumping off? Is this your new thing now? Is there a tail? Tail. Hi. Hi, baby. You're my goddess, aren't you? Yes. So
she knows. Believe me, she knows.
How has having a flute changed your life? Well, everything is better.
And furrier.
and furrier and floofier and snugglier, and seeing all her progress. Yes. It makes me so happy. Anyway, so how is having a goddess? Well, working with the Morrigan has changed my life completely. Let's look at even in the last year, right? So I pretty much had asked the goddess Morrigan to help me become independent. And boy, did the goddess Morrigan help me to become independent, whether I liked it or not. We went through all death cycles. We went through phantom death. We went through so many layers of shit until we came out of it in a place which is 100% better, 100% freer, 100% more independent. It completely has changed my life in so many ways, and things maybe feel difficult at the time, and things may suck at the time.
Oh yeah, there have definitely been nights where like I talked to you on the phone in the middle of the night and you were just like done with everything.
Yeah. And the last year there were quite a few of those, because I was in a devastated place of some of it.
I particularly remember you calling out to her when you were crying one night in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to share elements of that, but like there are definitely low points.
Yeah. I mean,
that having one doesn't mean that like everything is just always hunky-dory.
No. There are definitely highs and lows with it. I'm going to give you a high, and I'm going to give you a low, because I think that's yes, I was meant to go through that relationship for growth. Yes. I don't really want to put the focus on an individual because they don't deserve it. But yes, I feel that growth is definitely what ended up happening. So a low point with the Morrigan is that I was locked in the bathroom, which I spent way too much time locked in the bathroom by myself, crying and sobbing. And I'd just been through a phantom death phase again of 3 days of basically vomiting and everything coming out both ends. Sorry, but it's what happened. And I was purging, crying, screaming, like wound up on myself. My body was in pain. I was so stressed. I was hurting. Everything was like, my fingers were all clawed up. And I was like screaming without any noise coming out because I was in so much pain at that time. And I was like, why are you doing this to me? To Morrigan? Like, why did you have me believe in something only for it to all be bullshit? And at the time, I think at the time she just said, just remember that I love you. And she didn't say anything because at the time I wasn't ready to know. At the time I wasn't ready to hear. At the time I wasn't ready to perceive the lesson. I was just in the most amount of pain that I'd been in for a very long time. And it was a very low point. Am I missing anything? Because you were around at that point. Did I miss anything from the low point that happened? It's a bit of a haze for me.
Yeah, I mean, there were moments where you were like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I here? Why would I be put here? Like, I've done everything I can. And you would call out to her. And, you know, some of those instances were times where she would be at me and I would hear that fire thing that I mentioned earlier. And I'd be like, Joey, you get up off your ass and you live your life, you bitch. You gorgeous bitch. Like, yeah, it's not to say that she would say that, but you get what I'm saying. And not in that tone.
She might.
That's all my interpretation, I assure you.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a sort of, you know, stand. Stand
was a thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that despite all those trials, I managed to keep my authenticity, keep my sovereignty, keep my head up in the end, which is you have to, as a daughter Morrigan, you have to be able to take the hits and keep standing up. But I will say that coming out from there, my life changed to the point now where I am free. I am independent. I am in a place where I feel loved and supported. I'm in a place where I can connect. I'm in a place where I'm free to be myself without somebody constantly being a drain on who I am. And having gone through that which she put me through, I became myself. Absolutely. More myself than I had ever been up until that point, even in ways that I hadn't even perceived to be.
Here's the thing, guys. We're talking about that quote-unquote relationship. I knew her before that relationship. And even compared to before, she is way more herself now and way more happier. Like, seriously, it's not even about that last thing. It's just in general, I have seen her walk miles and miles to become who she is. And she's so much stronger for it and so much happier for it. And I think you guys can see that if you go back in her old videos and look as far back as you want to go. Compared to now, you can see that.
You can tell. Yeah. And I will say before we ask Cris the same question, that I also want to thank the community for that in this part, because the community came together, and I felt Morrigan's hand in all of it as well, but the community did it. The people came together and I am not exaggerating, in their thousands to come and help me, and it left an imprint on my heart for life. And it was incredibly powerful. So thank you to all of you guys as well. So Cris, including Cris, because I wouldn't still be here if it wasn't for Cris. Cris kept me alive, everybody. What is goddess energy, and how has goddess energy impacted your life?
So when I asked you, I was like, yeah, this is a great question. And then directed me, I'm like, dude, it's my life. Like, I would not be living. I can't imagine life without having that aspect. I mean, part of it, like I said earlier, my mother was pagan. So growing up, like my mother figure being pagan, that is goddess energy in itself too, even by the stereotype that we're working with, right? Like that is that. So I don't even know how I would be here. Because to me, that is goddess. The women that I grew up around, howling at the moon around a drumming, throwing booths into the fire, these middle-aged women, these crones, these mothers, these explorers, these medial women, full of medicine, full of heart, full of, wanting peace in the world and fighting for it. I could not imagine life without that element. And it was all goddess driven. And it still is. I mean, even here in a different state, I'll be 35. Is it next week? Joey?
7 days. 7 days time, right?
See, I knew this bitch would have the countdown. I knew it. So I'll be 35 soon. And in 35 years, I can't imagine not having it. And when I say that, don't get it, don't get it twisted that I am not 100% grateful for that and growing up the way I did with everything. Thank you. But I don't know how. In terms of Hecate is my mother's matron. So for me, she represents the familial line. She represents the matriarchs. I have her wheel tattooed on my left foot, and on my right foot is an Odin's wheel because he represents my father's ancestry. And so they are literally the path I walk. And they always have been. They're where I come from and where I will go and everything in between. And I'm getting like emotional talking about it. And hell, when my father died, hell came in, and she had already been around. She kind of, literally rose up from the floor one day. Joey has a video asking me about that where she interviewed me on it. So if you'd like to see more on that, you're welcome to go look. Because I know it's hard.
Podcast for March.
Yeah, it's hard to find people talking about hell a lot of times, honestly. But 1L for those of you who are just tuning in. But when my dad died, depression like swallowed me up and held me unto itself, away from everything. I felt completely detached, swimming in anxiety and depression, and those two will not leave you alone ever. So you can't fully rest and you can't fully get anything done. You're in this weird middle space. And she came to me and she sat with me, and I literally remember going to a certain cave that she brings me. And because I knew that I needed a journey, so I went and I surfaced in this underwater cave, and there were all of these courses all around. And as I walked up, they started sort of moving, and the essence was give them love. Give them love, send them love and understanding, compassion. Show compassion where it is due. That's a big thing with hell, and people overlook that. They think that, oh, she's a death goddess, so she's just about culling the herd and like cutting things in half. She's extremely compassionate. And she was like, show them compassion. You will honor their life and their death. And I go to hug them as they all kind of come up to me, sort of zombie flick moment from the outside. And as I'm hugging them, one of them is my father. She gave me that. The answer is everything.
There you go. The answer is everything. That's a beautiful way to put it. So we've got a few more questions. Amethyst Moon asked if you would how would you recommend a man connect to goddess energy? Her husband struggles with it. He has a deep respect for the connection, but he struggles with it personally. We did talk earlier about difficulties with personal connection, and I honestly feel that the answer is within that, but I will give you an abbreviated version, but I will say watch the whole video if you haven't already, because that is within, which is the connection and the difficulty of the connection there. Is within self.
I think also that's something to speak on too. When we speak on goddess, this shouldn't exclude the men, because the men are definitely lacking the embracing of what is traditionally denoted with the feminine. There are parts of them as well that have been subdued and oppressed, and other things that have been exaggerated. And so I think that they have their own struggles with this. And there's also a sort of like, you walk into a room with loving all the love in the chat, by the way. Thank you guys.
I was just gonna say Chris managed to make me cry too, so double high five for this chat.
Wait, was that double high five with me or them? Did I miss the high five?
Yeah, the high five is with you. You just made everybody cry, and I did it earlier, so high five.
But no, I think that they have their own particular challenges with things, and learning to listen to that side of self and show emotion also, and be comfortable in that, in especially the emotions that are, for instance, this crying thing that's happening right now. That is something that they're often told will stiff upper lip walk it off.
Yeah,
that's who you are. You have to be the breadwinner. And that is also something that is sort of in need of healing within them. And I think that sometimes they have to find their own road to that. But we all have different ways to come to it. And just because you don't have a vagina doesn't mean you're not able to. I mean, there are also people who are by gender and, various other instances in that. Yes.
We all come from womb space.
Absolutely.
We all return to womb space.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter who you are in your incarnation. You all come from a womb, and you will all return to a womb, and that might be a place to start.
Yeah. It's not about what you were born with.
Yeah.
It's about what you were born from and where you will go.
My flatmate is watching me right now and asks, what do you think about pop culture figures as goddess energies? She struggles connecting and likes using Wonder Woman. Whatever
I think,
works.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that works for her as her way to sort of come to that goddess, you know, then yeah. I know a lot of people, for instance, who have come to various gods and goddesses through games and things like that. Yes, Molly uses Wonder Woman, and we adore Molly.
She's one of us.
She is. Google gobble, google gobble. She's one of us. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. If you haven't checked out Molly Roberts, go check out her channel. She's amazing. And Kellyanne Maddox too. She was mentioned above as another person who works with Hell.
I love Kelly.
Absolutely.
And
she's
Molly.
Brilliant.
We love both of them. They're amazing.
Absolutely. We are continuously giving both of them shout outs. So
they don't need it. They're more popular than we. But they're basically like a modern archetype.
It's archetypes, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I have seen flashes of the Morrigan in modern artwork. I saw flashes of the Morrigan in modern game art concepts.
Yes.
The Witcher has elements in it which is very Morriganic.
And Dragon Age.
And Dragon Age, which obviously they name a character Morrigan specifically. But
yeah. I think also though the thing is a lot of times what it does is it meets someone kind of where they are. And then it allows them to sort of get to know that, and then from there go deeper with it if they choose to do so.
It can be
so if they choose to do so. So it can be a sort of gateway. So like for instance, I know with the Thor movies, with Norse stuff, there have been a lot of people who have come to Loki via the Thor movies. Now, obviously the Thor movies do not have the lore correct in the freaking least, guys. And not only like with the Ragnarok one with Hell, don't get me started, not even remotely the same. But via that, it perks someone's interest. They see it and they go, who is this person really though? What is their true story? Let me get to know this and then feel it deeper, follow that rabbit hole and see who they really are underneath sort of this mainstream mask sometimes. If that doesn't suit them, if they feel like there's something else. And then some people will use the mainstream mask as a means to connect in that midway point for them. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Like whatever works for you.
We have a fellow Dragon Age fan in the chat just
saying, yes!
Love Dragon Age, we're obsessed.
Yes.
I just want the universe to know that a real life Cullen would be more than welcome forever. I would marry a real life Cullen.
Ogren forever. Ogren for life.
So the kind of question which is around
hi Random.
Hi Random. Around what Jennifer said, I'm curious as to why she would choose me. Swooping is bad.
It is.
Have you ever licked a lamppost in winter? Everybody who's not played Dragon Age is now looking at me like,
it's
what
a Dragon Age thing, yes.
Ask the Morrigan then.
Yeah.
Ask the Morrigan why she chose you. Or step into your power and stop doubting yourself is what she just shouted. So that's a lesson right there. That's about owning who you are. Cool. Well, I think we're good for questions. Has anybody got any burning questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna shut down because we're over time.
And if they're burning, I recommend a cream.
It's not burning.
No. Well, you said burning.
We're right back to boobs and butts and tit high tea.
Hashtag hit. Hit high tea. Just hit it off the counter. No tea.
Tit high tea. Did we become spanking in the end of this? Did tea take on a whole new meaning?
Always. Also, did you guys see my boo? My boo. It's my boo.
Her pushing ghost. Guess where that came from?
Also, this ball above. That's actually where the boobs and balls joke came from. Yeah. It was a drink thing a long time ago.
Come on, baby. Come on.
I'm also trying not to catch myself on fire. Good job, me. All right. What's your favorite class to play in Dragon Age?
Mage.
Yeah, same. I play Mage.
I got it.
Most of the time.
I got it.
Oh, we finally got a fuzzy.
Go on then. I know you don't like being picked up for too long, so I love you so much. I love you so much. Hi, yes, chirps. Oh, I love you.
So off topic, but I love your blouses. Where do you find them? Where'd you find yours?
Blouse? It's a dress.
Like our top.
This is a dress, and this is a Killstar dress. This one online. You can get Killstar online.
This is a giant sweater. And I got it from Hot Topic. Actually, it was like on super sale, and it was massive. And I was like, I need a good like lounge around the house, gothic style, but also comfy sort of sweater. And so this was my treat to myself during the fall.
Yeah.
I don't actually shop there that often, but I just happened to find it, and I was like, "Oh, get in my cart."
I love Killstar stuff. I love it so much.
Yes, I am. Look, I like gothic and like metalhead kind of attire. However, I am also very like comfy and casual oriented, so it needs to be pretty functional and comfortable for me. Like,
yes, fall is the best.
So when I saw like an oversized skeletal sweater with a hood, I was like, sign me up right now. That is the perfect merge of me.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to round down then. Thank you guys. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. The turnout was phenomenal for a live. Thank you so much. And to the people who were with us for the whole 2 hours, you stamina bunnies, you. You came right from high tit tea to the end of this talk. I am proud of you guys.
Also, I love Neil Gaiman as well.
So if you guys want to find out more about Cris and I, the reason Cris and I don't do as many YouTube chats live like this right now is because we are crazy busy. You can like crazy hashtag high tit tea. It's a thing.
It's a thing.
How do we manage this? Every time we go live, we end up with the weirdest hashtag.
Just accept it. It's glorious.
It is glorious. I'm loving it. And if you want to like regularly hear or see Cris and I talking and interacting, the best way is on the podcast. What the Flux podcast. Cris shared the link earlier, but you can ask both Cris or I for a link directly to it.
Again.
Thank you. So the podcast itself at the beginning of each month is free. And if you want to join us for What the Flux podcast group, you can. And there is a Fluxing group, and every week we do an energy reading where we do tarot reading for the group and interact with the group, and we go through the source material with the group in much more depth. And this year is Year of the Goddess for What the Flux. So we're going to be looking at Lilith for January, February, and then the Goddess Hell for March, April. Hecate will be one of them that was asked earlier. Undoubtedly, she definitely will be one of them. She may even be the third. We'll find out when we get closer. But it is Year of the Goddess, and so those big goddesses are going to be fun.
And to also say, we've been doing this since 2017, I believe it was. October 31st, 2017. Yeah, is when we started doing the podcast. So there's also a lot of backlog on there too that you can listen to for free. And in the Fluxling group as a member, there's also like a bunch of archives too on everything that we've done.
And if you become a member, you get access to 9 full-length, handwritten, hand-created journeys where we take you on journeys of soul, which you can't get anywhere else yet. They will be available to purchase when we get that sorted elsewhere.
And then, of course, there's always our Patreons as well.
There is Patreons, which are all listed below. You can also get in touch with us through our Facebook pages, which are also listed below, or our Instagrams, which are also listed below.
Absolutely.
I love Instagram, actually. It's one of my favorites. So I'm immediately on Instagram before anywhere else. I prefer it, honestly.
Or, shameless plug, buy our shit or book our sessions, and you can speak with us there too. Whatever you want, ladies. We and gents. We have different levels of things for all different people, so whatever suits you.
you can join the group by it's basically signing up to What the Flux podcast, and you pay a monthly subscription fee, and then you get access to everything. And I am not exaggerating when I say you get such value for money, because Cris and I are both earth signs, and we basically like all the information, all the stuff.
It's a problem.
It's a problem. So but we'd be more than willing. We'd be excited to have more people in there. There's a really supportive group where people share and they share their energy readings each week with each other. They even do some oracle readings for each other, like after we've done one for the group each week. And it's
because that's the thing. We go live exclusively in there every Monday. Like that's a thing they get all the time.
Every Monday we're exclusively live in there. Yep.
There you go. That's the link to sign up for the podcast, guys.
Thank you.
Or like read more on it if you're interested.
So we will be looking at doing some more live sporadically through the year, but I will say that the unfortunately YouTube is not the focus for Cris and I right now because of how busy we are. And the best way to get as much Cris and Joey as you could possibly want is the podcast. And we will be doing other bits and pieces on all different platforms. You can get loads of us all over the place. There's the stores, there's consults, there's sessions. You can book a bone oracle reading with me if you want. You can come talk to your ancestors with me. You can talk about, you can talk to your ancestors with Cris. I was going to say about, but no, you can talk to your ancestors, Cris. And Cris puts a lot of energy into everything that she does, by the way, more than anybody I've ever met. So it's full ritual ceremony led by Cris. So that's all is that all the plugging? Is that all the plugging?
Yeah.
All the single plugging.
We talked about next month or the next goddess being Hell in the podcast in March. That's pretty much all the shameless plugging we got.
Well, I'm sure we can think of more shameless plugging if we wanted to, but I think we'll call it quits while we're ahead. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you to the guys that stayed around for 2 hours.
Absolutely. Thank you to everybody who showed up. We haven't done this in a while, so
70
I'm
people.
glad to see everybody. There's a lot of new faces too.
Whew. So thank you guys.
Yes, thank you for all your questions.
And as always, stay fluxy.
Love your faces.
And catch you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.